The Veyari were a quiet species, living high above their homeworld in floating cities that drifted like silver islands among the clouds. Their wings carried them through the skies, and their voices filled the air with gentle songs. They were not a people of war or greed. To them, the greatest honor was not to conquer but to save. Every life, no matter how small or strange, was sacred. On a soft morning, when the skies were painted gold by the rising sun, the Veyari watchtowers picked up a faint signal. It was weak, almost lost in the endless static of space. But it carried a rhythm of distress. Many thought it was debris, perhaps a machine long forgotten, but their elders ordered an airship to investigate. Saving lives was their duty, even if the life was unknown. Far out, drifting in the emptiness, they found a shattered escape pod. Its hull was scarred by fire, its systems failing. Inside lay a figure they had never seen before. His body was frail, compared to their tall forms. His skin carried strange marks and scars. He was human. He was dying. The Veyari worked quickly. Their healers lifted him from the wreck and brought him to the heart of their city. The man's breaths were shallow and his pulse weak. For many days he drifted between life and death. Their healers sang soft songs over him, wrapping his broken body in their medicines. Their children, curious but kind, whispered about the strange being who had fallen from the stars. When the man finally opened his eyes, he found himself in a room of white stone and flowing light. Above him stood winged beings with wide, gentle eyes. He tried to sit, but pain shot through him. One of them touched his arm lightly and said in broken words, "Rest. You are safe." The man's name was Elias. His voice was rough, cracked by thirst, but when he spoke, he tried to smile. "I thought I was gone," he whispered. "Guess I was lucky you found me." For the Veyari, it was nothing unusual. To them, saving one life was as natural as breathing. But for Elias, who had lost everything in the fire of his ship, this kindness was more than medicine. It was hope. Days turned into weeks. As his body healed, Elias began to walk among the Veyari. At first, he was strange to them, his heavy steps, his lack of wings, his deep laugh that echoed through their airy halls. But soon, he became part of their days. He listened to their songs, and though his voice could not reach the same heights, he tried to join, making the children laugh with his clumsy attempts. He told them stories of Earth, of wide oceans and mountains that touched the sky. He showed their engineers how humans fixed broken machines with simple tools. He even tried to help repair their airships, though he often slipped, earning bruises and laughter alike. The Veyari grew to love him, and Elias grew to love them. He had lost his crew, his mission, his old life. But here, among the winged people, he found something new, a family. One night, as he sat with the elders beneath the shimmering glow of their twin moons, he made a quiet promise. His voice was steady, though his eyes were wet. "You saved me when I was nothing but a dying stranger. If ever a day comes, when you need us, humanity will remember." The elders smiled, thinking it only words of gratitude. To them, saving one life was simply their way. They never imagined how far those words would carry across the stars. For the Veyari, it was just another act of kindness. For Elias, it was a vow. And for humanity, though they did not yet know it, it was the beginning of a story that would one day shake the galaxy. Elias did not heal in days. His body carried burns, broken bones, and memories of fire. But the Veyari were patient. They wrapped his wounds, gave him water sweetened with herbs, and sang songs that lifted his spirit when his strength faltered. He had never known such gentle care. In the beginning, he felt like an outsider. The Veyari were tall and graceful, their wings catching light like silver sails. They moved with ease through their floating city, while Elias stumbled on the narrow walkways, clutching the rails, dizzy from the heights. Children laughed softly when he fell, but their laughter was never cruel. They would help him up, dust off his clothes, and flap their tiny wings proudly as if showing him how to balance. Slowly, He began to learn their ways. Elias discovered that the Veiri measured time by the rhythm of the winds. Morning began with golden light flooding the high skies, and evening closed with great clouds glowing red. Their lives were peaceful, filled with music and craft. Some carved statues from crystal, others brewed medicines from sky flowers, and still others cared for the flocks of bright-feathered birds that followed the city wherever it drifted. He asked why they worked so hard if they had no wars, no empires to defend. An elder only smiled and said, "Because life is worth keeping, no matter whose it is." Those words sank deep into Elias's heart. The days turned into weeks, and soon Elias found a place among them. He was not only the man they had saved. He became a brother, a friend, a storyteller. The children adored him. They would crowd around when he sat on the edge of the sky platforms, asking him to tell them about Earth. He would describe oceans that stretched beyond sight, waves roaring louder than thunder. He told them of forests where the trees were so tall, they seemed to hold up the sky. He described deserts, endless and golden, where the sun painted the sand with fire. The Veiri listened with wide eyes. They had never seen such things. Their world was only clouds and peaks, light and wind, and in return they shared their songs, tales of winged heroes who carried their people to safety, of ancient storms that tested their courage, of kindnesses given freely without hope of return. Though he was human, Elias sang with them, his voice rough but full of spirit. The children laughed when he stumbled on their words, but they cheered him when he tried again. And when he finally sang a full song without pause, they clapped their wings in delight. He also worked beside their builders and healers. His hands, though clumsy, were strong. He repaired the frames of airships, lifted stones for new walkways, and carried medicines through the narrow halls. He never complained, even when sweat ran down his face. "I owe you more than I can repay," he said often. "This is only a beginning." The Veiri began to see him not as a guest, but as one of their own. He ate at their tables, joined their festivals, and even stood in their ceremonies, his head bowed as they honored the winds. One evening, when the moons rose high and their glow touched the city with silver light, Elias sat with the elders. His eyes wandered over the floating homes, the gentle glow of lanterns, the laughter of children echoing in the air. He felt something stir within him, a peace he had never known and a fear he could not ignore, because deep inside, he knew such peace was fragile. He had seen the cruelty of the galaxy. He had seen greed devour entire worlds, seen armies tear lives apart. The Veiri had no armies, no weapons, no walls but clouds. And so Elias spoke. "You gave me a home when I had none. You treated me as one of your own. I swear, if a day ever comes when danger finds you, I will not forget. Humanity will not forget." The elders exchanged quiet glances. To them, his vow was touching, but they thought it only words of gratitude. They could not imagine needing such protection. To them, their lives were simple, their kindness was ordinary. But Elias knew better. He carried in his heart the certainty that one day this fragile sky paradise might face the darkness he had seen elsewhere, and if that day came, he would make sure humanity answered. He did not know when or how, but he meant every word. And under the glow of the twin moons, the Veiri welcomed him, not as a stranger, not as a guest, but as family. Years passed. Elias grew strong again, though his hair began to turn gray at the edges. The Veiri still saw him as family, and he still kept his promise in his heart. Their world drifted in peace, untouched by the cruelty of the galaxy. But peace, as Elias feared, was never forever. It began with whispers. Traders who sometimes visited the skies spoke of a brutal empire moving through the stars. They were called the Dracor. Where they arrived, silence followed. Planets emptied, cities burned, species vanished. The Dracor did not come to trade or to share, they came only to take. Their fleet stripped worlds of resources and left ashes behind. At first, the Veiri did not believe such cruelty was possible. How could anyone destroy life so easily? Their hearts could not imagine such hunger. Elias, however, knew the truth. He had seen the marks of war on other planets. He had seen humans fight enemies who thought just the same. And deep inside, he feared the day the Dracor's shadow would reach the skies of the Veari. That day came sooner than anyone expected. One morning, when the light of dawn had barely touched the floating cities, the sky trembled. Great black ships broke through, the clouds their shapes like jagged claws. Their engines screamed and their shadows swallowed the light. The Veari froze in terror. Never in their history had such ships appeared above their world. The Dracor broadcast a message, their voice cold and sharp. Winged people of the clouds, your skies now belong to the Dracor Empire. You will submit. Your resources are ours. Resist, and you will be erased. The Veari had no armies, no weapons. Their cities were built for song and healing, not for battle. Panic spread as the Dracor's war machines descended, tearing through platforms and burning airships with beams of fire. The skies that once shone with peace now filled with smoke and screams. Elias ran through the chaos, helping wherever he could. He carried children to safety, pulled the wounded from collapsing halls, and shouted for the Veari to flee higher into the clouds. His heart burned with helplessness. He was only one man. Even if he had been armed, what could he do against fleets of warships? The Veari elders gathered in despair. They prayed to the winds, but the winds carried only fire. Their songs of peace were drowned out by the roar of destruction. For the first time they faced a foe that cared nothing for life, only for conquest. It was then that one elder remembered Elias's words, the promise he had made years ago under the twin moons. If danger comes, humanity will not forget. With trembling hands, they brought out the old device Elias had repaired long ago. A simple transmitter, barely powerful enough to reach the stars. With tears in their eyes, they spoke into it. To the humans who may hear it, we are the Veari. Long ago we saved one of your kind. He became our family. Now we are burning. If you remember him, if you remember us, please, we need you. The message was sent into the void, a fragile cry against the storm. The Dracor mocked them. Their commander sneered from his ship, his voice booming across the skies. No one will come for you. No one remembers the weak. You will fall alone. The Veari lowered their heads, hearts breaking. Elias stood among them, fists clenched, his voice shaking with fury. They are wrong, he said. Humans remember. I know they do. But as the days passed, the skies grew darker, and no answer came. The Veari's hope began to fade. They hid among the broken clouds, their wings torn, their homes burning. Children asked if help would come, and the elders had no words to comfort them. Elias, though, refused to give up. Every night he looked at the stars and whispered into the winds, remember them, please, remember. The Veari were a people of kindness, but kindness alone could not stop fire and steel. And as the Dracor prepared for their final strike, the fragile family of the sky stood on the edge of extinction, waiting for an answer that might never come. The skies of the Veari no longer glowed with peace. Smoke drifted across the floating cities and the air smelled of ash. The Dracor had torn through their platforms, leaving scars where music and light once filled the air. Homes that once echoed with laughter now hung broken and dark, swaying like wounded birds in the wind. The people tried to endure. They carried the wounded into caves high on the cliffs, far above the reach of the flames. They tied what little food they had into bundles and passed it from wing to wing, always giving the youngest and weakest the first share. The Veari had always believed that kindness could protect them, but now kindness was all they had left. At night, they gathered, around small fires, their songs quiet, their voices trembling. Their children asked the same question every evening. Will the humans come? The elders would pause before answering. Their wings drooped with sorrow, for the truth was cruel. They did not know. Still, they forced smiles and whispered, yes, little ones. We sent the call. The stars carry our voice. Help will come. But when the children fell asleep, the elders wept silently, afraid those words were only lies. Elias refused to surrender to despair. Every day, he searched the skies, scanning for the flash of light that might mean ships arriving. Every night he returned to the transmitter, pressing the worn button and sending his voice into the void. "This is Elias Callan of Earth," he would say, his voice raw with exhaustion. "The Vayari saved my life when no one else could. They are my family. If any human vessel can hear me, I beg you, answer, do not let them fall." But the transmitter remained cold. No reply came. The Dracor grew bold. Their fleets circled the skies like vultures. Their commander spoke again, his words like poison dripping from the clouds. "Where are your saviors now? Where are the humans you cry for? They do not care. For you, they do not care for one feather on your fragile wings." The Vayari trembled. Some began to believe him. They wondered if perhaps Elias had been wrong, if perhaps humanity had forgotten or never heard their plea at all. One night, when the twin moons rose behind black smoke, Elias sat with the eldest of the Vayari. The old one's feathers were gray and worn, his voice cracked by years. He looked at Elias with weary eyes and asked, "Did we make a mistake trusting your people?" The question cut Elias deeper than any wound. He bowed his head, his fists clenched. "I don't know," he whispered, "but I believe in them. I have to. Humanity remembers its debts. They will come. I know they will." The elder placed a frail hand on his shoulder. "You speak with the fire of hope, but hope is a fragile flame when storms rise." Still, Elias would not let the flame die. He walked through the camps, speaking to the children, helping the healers, carrying heavy stones to rebuild shelters. He told stories of Earth louder than the roar of the Dracor ships, trying to keep the spark alive in their hearts. The Dracor, amused by this defiance, delayed their final strike. They enjoyed watching the hope of the Vayari wither. They let them believe for a little while longer that help might come. It made their cruelty sharper. And so the Vayari waited. Days stretched into weeks. The clouds grew darker, the airships fewer, the voices quieter. Silence hung heavier with each sunrise. They prayed to the winds. They clung to each other. And in the heart of the storm, they held to a single promise made years ago by a broken man under silver moons. Humanity will not forget. But as the Dracor prepared their final assault, silence still ruled the stars. No ships had come. No voices answered. The Vayari looked up at the empty sky and wondered if this was the end. The Vayari woke to another morning of smoke. Their skies, once golden with light, were blackened by the shadow of Dracor warships. The enemy had grown, tired of waiting. Their fleets gathered above the largest floating city, their weapons humming with power. The final strike had come. The Vayari huddled together. Families clutched each other's wings, mothers shielded their children. And the elders whispered prayers to the winds. Their voices were soft, trembling, nearly broken. The Dracor commander's voice filled the sky like thunder. "Your time is over. No one has come. No one will come. You are alone. And now you are ours." Elias stood at the edge of the platform, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. His chest ached with helpless rage. He had begged the stars, pleaded with every memory of humanity to answer. But only silence had come, and now, as the Dracor ships charged their weapons, even his faith trembled. Still he shouted into the wind, "Humanity remembers. You hear me? Humanity does not forget." His voice broke, but he shouted again, louder, a desperate cry. "They will come." And then the stars moved. At first it was only a flicker, a ripple in the sky. The Dracor laughed, thinking it a trick of light. But the ripple grew. Space itself seemed to tear open, and from the blackness, shapes emerged. Silver, white, gray, vast as mountains, ships, dozens at first, then hundreds, then thousands, human ships, filling the sky until it burned with their engines' fire. Carriers, cruisers, frigates, an armada, larger than any the Vayari had ever dreamed. Their hulls gleamed with the banners of Earth and its colonies. The silence of the stars was broken by a single voice. "This is Admiral Reza of the United Earth Fleet." The transmission thundered across every channel. "To the Vayari people, your family is not forgotten. Humanity stands with you." The Dracor froze. Their commander snarled in disbelief. Impossible. They would not come for feathers. But humanity had come. Another voice joined the transmission, rough but steady, carrying both fire and love. Elias. His voice echoed across the Vayari skies, heard in every broken home, every trembling heart. "My family of the skies," he said. "You saved me when I was nothing but a dying man. You gave me hope. And now humanity gives that hope back to you. You are not alone, not anymore." The Vayari wept. Children clung to their parents, pointing to the horizon, their eyes wide with wonder. Elders fell to their knees, whispering, thanks to the winds, though they knew now that it was not the winds who had saved them. It was a promise kept. The Dracor fleet, once so mighty, suddenly looked small before the wall of steel and fire that humanity brought. Their commander barked orders, fear lacing his voice. "Attack them! Burn them all!" But humanity was ready. Across the sky, the human ships opened their bays. Weapons that glowed like suns powered up, and the stars themselves seemed to shudder at their roar. Humanity did not hesitate. They did not bargain. They came for one reason: to save the Vayari. And when the first human volley struck, the sky lit up like dawn. The Dracor's ships cracked under the fire. Explosions rippled through. Their fleet, where the Vayari had only known helplessness, they now saw fury unleashed. Humanity fought not for conquest, not for resources, but for family, for a single kindness once given to a stranger. Elias stood at the edge of the platform, tears streaming down his face as the night turned into blazing light. "I told you," he whispered to the Vayari beside him. "I told you they would come." The battle had begun, and the skies of the Vayari, once filled with despair, now burned with hope. For the first time since the Dracor came, the winged people lifted their heads high. And for the first time the Dracor felt fear, because humanity had returned. And humanity did not forget. The first human strike tore through the Dracor fleet like lightning. The sky blazed with fire as enemy ships split apart, their twisted metal raining down through the clouds. For the Vayari, who had never seen war, the sight was both terrifying and breathtaking. The heavens that once held only light and song now burned with the fury of two great powers. The Dracor were not cowards. They had crushed many civilizations, and they believed the Vayari would be no different. With a roar of engines, they swarmed toward the human armada, their black ships spitting fire. Beams of energy lanced through the clouds, tearing the air apart. But humanity did not break. The Earth fleet moved with a discipline forged in centuries of survival. Fighters launched from carriers like swarms of silver birds, diving into the enemy lines with deadly precision. Cruisers formed walls of steel, protecting the larger ships, their cannons hammering the Dracor with relentless rhythm. Every time a human vessel fell, 3 more surged forward. From the cliffs, the Vayari watched with wide, tear-filled eyes. Their wings shivered with both fear and awe. They saw ships die in fire, men and women giving their lives for strangers they had never met. It was not conquest. It was not greed. It was loyalty, born from a single act of kindness long ago. One child tugged at his mother's wing and whispered, "Why are they fighting for us? We are nothing to them." The mother pulled him close, her voice trembling. "Because once we saved one of them, and they did not forget." Elias stood among them, his eyes fixed on the burning sky. Every explosion cut into him like a blade, for he knew each one meant human lives were falling. Yet with every strike against the Dracor, his heart surged with pride. "They came for you," he whispered. "For all of you." The battle raged for hours. The Dracor fought like predators, striking hard and fast, trying to overwhelm the humans with sheer numbers. But humanity answered with fire and fury. Where the Dracor sought to destroy, humans sought to protect. Their formations held, their weapons struck true, and slowly the tide began to turn. The Dracor commander, once so confident, now shouted with desperation. His fleet was breaking. Press them harder, do not yield. But fear had already infected his soldiers. They had never faced an enemy that fought not for riches, not for empire, but for love, for the memory of a single man saved by strangers. The Veyari's broken cities lit up as the battle raged above them. Clouds glowed orange and gold from the firestorms. For the first time since the invasion, the people felt their wings lift with hope. They began to sing, not songs of sorrow, but songs of courage. Soft at first, then louder, their voices rose into the burning sky. The humans heard. Across comms, soldiers fighting in the void listened to the strange, beautiful chorus from below, and it pushed them harder. They fought with renewed strength, every strike a vow that the Veyari would live. When the final push came, humanity unleashed everything. Carriers released wave after wave of fighters. Cannons blazed until their barrels glowed red. Missiles streaked through the sky like falling stars. The Dracor fleet cracked under the weight of it. One by one, their ships exploded, their fire dying into embers. At last, the Dracor commander's vessel was struck. Flames tore through its hull, and with a final scream of rage, it vanished into the clouds below. Silence followed, broken only by the hum of human engines. The battle was over. The Veyari collapsed to their knees, their wings trembling. They wept openly, not just for their own survival, but for the sacrifice they had witnessed. Above them, the human fleet remained, a shield of steel and light. Elias turned to the elders, his voice breaking with emotion. You see, humanity did not forget. They never will. And as the smoke cleared, the Veyari understood. They were no longer alone. Their skies had been saved by fire and fury, not their own, but that of a species who had chosen to fight for them as if they were family. The smoke of battle still lingered across the skies, drifting like dark scars over the floating cities. Pieces of broken ships fell slowly through the clouds, glowing faintly before vanishing into the endless depths below. For the Veyari, the silence that followed felt unreal. After days of fear and despair, the roar of war was gone. They were alive. Human fleet remained above, hundreds of ships forming a shield that stretched across the heavens. Their engines hummed like distant thunder, steady and strong, a promise that the Dracor would not return. On the cliffs, the Veyari gathered. Their wings drooped with exhaustion, their feathers singed by fire, but their eyes shone with a light they had not known in weeks. Hope. Children clung to their parents, pointing to the massive ships above. They whispered in awe as if the humans were not soldiers, but giants carved from the stars. Soon, the first human vessels descended. Dropships cut through the smoke, their ramps opening to reveal men and women in armor. They carried crates of food, water, and medicine. Their faces were tired, marked with the weight of battle, yet they smiled as they offered their hands to the Veyari. The winged people, once trembling with fear, now stepped forward with tears of gratitude. They touched the hands of the strangers, feeling the roughness of their gloves, the strength of their grip. For the first time, they realized that humanity had not come as conquerors or saviors to be worshipped. They had come as family. Elias walked. Among them, his step slow but steady. He carried no armor, no weapons, only the scars of his long journey. When the Veyari saw him, they rushed forward, children wrapping their wings around him, elders bowing their heads in respect. An elder, his feathers white with age, placed a trembling hand on Elias's shoulder. His voice cracked with emotion. Why would your people come so far, fight so hard, bleed so much, for us? Elias knelt, meeting the elder's eyes. His face was lined with years and sorrow, but his gaze burned with truth. Because once you saved a single human, and humanity does not forget. The elder wept openly, his tears shining like drops of silver. Around them, the Veyari raised their voices in song, not the songs of mourning, but songs of life. Their voices carried across the ruins, lifting into the clouds, blending with the hum of human engines above. The humans listened in silence, many lowering their heads. For them, too, it was more than victory. It was a reminder of why they fought, not only for their own survival, but for bonds that stretched beyond blood, beyond worlds. Rebuilding began at once. Human engineers worked beside Vayari builders, repairing shattered platforms and broken bridges. Soldiers carried heavy stones, laughing, when children flapped their wings proudly to show them the proper way to balance in the wind. Medics tended both human and Vayari wounds, sharing medicine, stories, and quiet smiles. Slowly, the floating cities began to heal. Where smoke had once risen, lanterns glowed again. Where silence had once weighed heavy, laughter returned. The Vayari were no longer alone in the skies. They had family among the stars. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the repaired platforms, Elias stood with the elders once more. The people gathered around, their wings glowing silver in the moonlight. Elias looked out across the horizon, his heart full. "You gave me a home when I had none," he said softly. "You gave me family when I had lost everything. Tonight I see the promise fulfilled, not by me but by all of humanity, but by all of, and I swear to you this bond will never break. Not while we live." The crowd was silent for a moment. Then a child's voice rang out, clear and bright. "We are family." Cheers rose, wings clapped, voices sang. And beneath the silver moons, humans and Vayari stood side by side, their shadows mingling on the stone. The Dracor had come to erase a people. Instead, they had awakened a bond that would echo across the galaxy for centuries to come, because once, the Vayari had saved a single human, and humanity had returned, not just to save them but to make sure their song would never be silenced.